Okay, review time. These are some LED light bulbs from GE called the Bright Stick. You can see there's no less than 3 in this box, and that's because they were pretty cheap. The LED market's getting to the point where LEDs are getting quite cost competitive. So I'm going to take a look at these bulbs. Because there's a whole bunch of bulbs in this market that are similar, I'll do a bit of a comparison as well. This is the Philips Basic bulb, also sold in multi-pack. And then there's the Cree 4-flow. I don't know if it's sold in a multi-pack, but certainly is their least expensive offering. So I'll be comparing these 3 bulbs as I review them. The first unique attribute of the bulb, of course, is that it is simply an unusual shape. It looks quite small, actually, compared to sort of a typical A-shaped bulb. So the light pattern will be a really interesting question as to whether or not it has a similar light pattern to these bulbs, or if there's been some compromises there. Okay, let's tear it apart and see how they've achieved such a low-cost model. Okay, I saw the top off, obviously, and it's just a bit of opaque plastic. It's interesting how this shape here can create actually a fairly decent light distribution pattern, because it's just simply a planar array of LEDs here, all pointing downwards. You wouldn't have expected that such a simple arrangement could achieve a fairly decent light pattern, so a little bit of cleverness going on here. So let's take a look at the emitter PCB. It's kind of interesting. There's a carrier backing, I presume for heat dissipation purposes, and it's got some divots in the back, and that's because they've actually pressed the metal and they cold flow it, so it actually holds the aluminum emitter array circuit board onto the carrier. So certainly a cost-effective approach to assembling it. Sometimes you see screws, and sometimes you see adhesive epoxies, and I suspect they've now chosen probably the very cheapest, which is of course to build a jig and just deform the metal. So strength in manufacturing excellence there. There is some text here. I'm just insert that. It's the UL marking number. You can actually go into a database and find out who made this board. Let me pop up that listing. Again, no surprise, a company based in China where the whole assembly is created. Okay, so obviously a metal shell. It's been then coated with a powder coat, it looks like. And there's no potting compound. You can clearly see it's just an empty shell. And below that, of course, the circuit board. So let's take a zoom into here and look at the details of it. Okay, so here's the circuit board extracted. You can see it's a single-sided board, meaning there's no traces on this side. Material's probably phenolic, which is a very inexpensive material. So that's pretty consistent with what you'd expect from a super low-cost bulb. The transformers here, there's a choke for EMI noise protection, there's a fuse here, all kind of standard parts. The first interesting thing you can see here is a UL number. I'm going to zoom into it. And then let me inset the picture of the vendor. No great surprise, of course, the actual raw circuit board is manufactured in China, as you'd expect. Let's flip it over. And the topology is quite simple, again, as you would expect for such a cheap bulb. The full wave rectifier here, of course, and here's the integrated circuit. Let me just pop in and set the die markings, pardon me, the package markings. I couldn't find the vendor of this IC. I presume it's a fairly deep Chinese company. Wouldn't be offered into the North American market, I would expect. So this is kind of what you expect. There's 7 parts placements on one side and just a handful of parts placements here on the other side from surface mount. So an inexpensive assembly. Okay, thermal profile. You can see it's a thermograph there, and the camera is recording about 80 degrees Celsius on the base of the bulb, which is really hot. That's a really significant temperature rise. It's about 25 above in my workshop today. So let me insert the thermographs, the other 2 bulbs, and you can see they're recording temperatures more in the 40-degree range. So this bulb has a really significant temperature rise. And the reason that's significant is electronics reliability is often influenced by temperature. So I would speculate this bulb here may not have a really long service life. Okay, flicker test. There's a solar cell here, and of course the light bulb shining onto it. And if you look at the output on an oscilloscope, you can get a sense as to whether or not there's flicker. And the answer here is no, there's no flicker in this bulb. Not a huge surprise, it's a non-dimmable architecture, and it seems to be pretty easy to build a bulb without flicker. And the fact that's true of the other 2 bulbs as well. So all bulbs actually get points here for being flicker-free performance. Okay, let's talk about cost. That's probably the most defining characteristic of these bulbs. This is the Cree 4-flow. Actually, they do sell it in a 6-pack. It was $6. All these are coming from the Home Depot. They seem to have the most innovative stock. So if you're in America, you definitely have access to some of the neatest LED light bulbs out there. The next one up is the one that we're looking at today, which is the Bright Stick, coming at $3.30. And then the winner is the basic bulb from Philips, coming in at $2.50. Although these prices really seem to bounce around a lot because there's a real price war going on right now. But it looks like Philips is holding the lead. They've really dramatically dropped the price of this bulb recently. I'm sure it was in response to the extremely sharply priced GE product, and Cree is now starting to fall behind. Okay, light distribution patterns, basically how light comes out of the bulb. So-called polar graph here, and basically the distance from the center to the line indicates a greater amount of light the further you get away. And you can see that on the side lobes here, most of the light's going out. And the top here, it's not quite as long of a distance, so basically a side-firing bulb, but certainly an okay emulation of an A-shaped light bulb. So I would give a point to this bulb actually being actually acceptable, even though it doesn't look anything like an A-shape. When I compare it to the other two bulbs, the GE one is in blue now, and the Cree 4-flow looks like it's pretty similar to the Bright Stick. Unfortunately, there's a pattern of holes in this bulb, and if you have a fixture which isn't shielded or shaded, you can get this weird pattern in your wall. So although the light pattern is not too bad, those openings are not very appealing to me, so I wouldn't give a point to that bulb. The Philips basic bulb, you can see it shines down mostly this direction here. It's like a floodlight, which is fine, except that an A-shaped bulb I don't think should do that. It should have more of a side lobe in my mind. So I wouldn't assign a point there. So in this regard, the Bright Stick looks pretty good. Okay, well there's the winner, and here's the runner-ups.